Hello and welcome to Meet the Writers. I'm Georgina Godwin. Now, we are in Charleston in South Carolina, and there's a little bit of background noise. That's because we're sitting next to a beautiful swimming pool on a lovely, lovely sunny day, but there's a bit of traffic and a little bit of noise around us. It is such a pleasure, though, to be reunited with today's guest. We've spoken before, but the world he now writes from has changed so profoundly that this feels like an entirely new conversation. Over the past 3 years, he's travelled across Ukraine and across the world, observing, listening and documenting with an honesty and clarity that have made him one of his country's defining voices. His war diaries begin with Our Daily War, capturing the first stretch of life after the full-scale invasion, the shock, the dislocation and the strange persistence of routine. 3 Years on Fire moves into the third year of the conflict, tracing everything from frontline journeys to surreal flashes of humour and the small rituals that allow people to endure. And alongside, he's finally returned to fiction with The Stolen Heart. And more, we're going to hear all about it. Andrey Kurkov, welcome to Meet the Writers.
Hello.
Since we last spoke, you've travelled widely across Ukraine and far beyond. Where have these last 3 years carried you?
Geographically everywhere except maybe Japan, China. But I went to India to talk about Ukraine. I went to Scandinavian countries and everywhere in Europe. Yeah, and I have been to many places in Ukraine, but not yet to the front line. Although I traveled to the front line in 2015 and 17 before the full-scale invasion, but we should remember that the war started actually in February 2014 with annexation of Crimea and beginning of occupation of Donbass.
When you began the diaries that became Our Daily War, the war was still in its first chaotic phase after that full-scale invasion. How did you start capturing those very early weeks on the page? And did you have a sense that this was your duty? You were doing this for your country to tell everybody what was going on?
I think actually I was not alone, but I already when living in Kiev in a car with my wife to find our children and their friends in Lviv in western Ukraine, I was receiving phone calls from radios all around the world and requests to write articles and commentaries. And actually most of the travel to the west of the country where we became displaced persons, I was stuck in the traffic jams because traffic jams were like between 40 and 60 miles long every time. And I was commenting on the things I saw. And what I saw actually hundreds and thousands of cars with families escaping from the south via Kiev to the west of the country. And there is only one road leading to the west of the country, from Kiev to Lviv and then to Warsaw. And it's a narrow road. It's officially called highway, but it is not. It has two lines or one line each way.
It's odd with all these kind of scenes of drama, huge drama. There is actually the kind of quotidian, the mundane that's going on alongside it.
Well, the drama always consists of details, of mundane. I mean, you have your routine destroyed. I mean, you are used to do something every morning and then go to coffee place or meet friends, and then suddenly everything is gone, everything is cancelled by the war.
You also record small gestures of connection and normality, and I wonder what of those early moments really stay with you?
Well, first of all, actually, the third night, actually, after the full-scale invasion started, we were stuck in the traffic jam in Carpathian Mountains. It was end of February, minus 15 centigrade Celsius outside the car, very little petrol in the car, and 9 people, because we had our 3 children, adult children, their friends, us with Elizabeth, with my wife. And then I rushed to a motel thinking that maybe they have a room, because, I mean, if I run the engine, I will not have enough petrol to get to Uzhhorod, where we were heading. And a man actually gave me a telephone number of a local young businessman who, before the war, bought an abandoned Soviet tourist hostel. So I called this man at 1 o'clock in the morning. He picked up. I told him that we need somewhere to stay because, I mean, we cannot actually probably survive without running the engine, and then we will be without petrol. And he explained me how to get to this hostel. I went there. He came up a bit later because he lived 15 miles away. He brought blankets, electrical heaters, towels, everything. He put us up in 3 rooms, and then he returned to the traffic jam from which we actually escaped, and brought back to the same hostel about 15-20 cars with families with young children. And actually he didn't want to take any money. We paid like $5 per person for the night, but he didn't want anything.
It's extraordinary. Do you find that war does that? It brings out the humanity and the kindness in people?
Yeah, because everybody is equal in front of the war. Everybody, rich, poor, handicapped, healthy. But everybody understands that you either all to be destroyed or you will be helping each other and you will be saved. And I met gestures of kindness so many times in the first months of the full-scale invasion. It is unbelievable.
Then you reach the period covered in 3 years on fire, and the war has shifted into a different rhythm. And I wonder what new patterns begin to emerge after war becomes your daily reality.
Well, you have to learn a lot of new things. You have to learn how to survive, how to behave, what to do if you hear alert, a siren. And of course, the main thing is also to learn new principles of logistics, because we don't have aviation, we don't have planes for 4 years now. To travel out of Ukraine you need at least 1.5 days or 2 days. So I learned lots of different routes. I discovered lots of small interesting places in Romania on the border, in Czech Republic, in Slovak Republic, in Poland, in Hungary, and this is actually what is now defining my travels. I'm now on a trip which will last 40 days because I don't want to waste 4 days each time to come back and to leave the country.
Your new book includes images that feel almost surreal. Children wearing bullet-resistant hoods to school, clowns enlisting, soldiers composing haiku on the front lines. Tell us about some of that.
Well, life changes 100% for everybody during the war. And then people rediscover themselves. They can rediscover themselves in a negative sense, that they want to desert from the army, they want to escape illegally from the country, but people also rediscovering themselves as very responsible citizens, as kind people, as people who are ready to help everybody and to be more creative, because actually also your survival depends on the level of your creativity. So mental survival depends on the level you can actually motivate yourself and remain sane in the crazy times.
Do you think that the war has changed your writing voice?
Yes, definitely. First of all, I couldn't write fiction for 2.5 years. And when I restarted writing fiction, I realized that some of the taboos I had, some moments of self-censorship that I had before the war, they were gone. I was trying and I couldn't write before the full-scale invasion any kind of bloody, very violent scenes in my fiction. And now I have no problems with it, because actually violence became a normality. You see blood on the news every day. And the news we get from YouTube, from TV channels, from Telegram channels, and actually the soldiers are sharing the experience. They are recording their battles with the GoPro cameras and things, and actually, the blood, the cruelty becomes normality, and then you don't have any more sort of limits. Also, actually, I did lose my second time in my life sense of humor in the beginning of full-scale invasion. When it came back much darker than I used to. I like dark humor, but this is, something very black that I suddenly realized. And still, I think sense of humor is one of the remedies to stay sane in this situation. What else actually is important to say, that you stop reacting to drama in a dramatic way. I do have emotions, but I cannot show emotions anymore when I see the funerals of the military brought to Maidan, to the central square, every day almost, by their friends and relatives, and these public farewells. But when somebody from my friends, from the people I know, died or were killed, then I do have emotions, and I am very sad, and I would say, psychologically I suffer. But the death is also everyday normality, and you stop reacting to it, because you can understand that you will be next one. Like life in Kiev now is a Russian roulette. You never know who dies tomorrow, but every night there are explosions, hundreds of big drones which are 3 meters tall, these Iranian Shahed drones, and then missiles. And if you decided to stay on in the city where you live and where you are bombed, it means that you actually accept that you can be killed.
You write a lot about culture, about books, theatre, music, libraries. What have you observed about cultural survival in Ukraine?
Well, the culture disappeared in the first 2 months of the war, when the battle for Kiev was going on. But then it re-emerged in a very different way. Like Kharkiv, which is the big city practically on the front line with Russia. They restarted the return of culture as a means of resistance. They started book discussions in the metro stations. They started with the rock concerts in the bomb shelters, and then it came to Kyiv, and we had actually cinema screening, film screenings on the metro platforms in the night for those people who were hiding there. The concerts, choir concerts in the metro. Also, the culture went underground, and slowly later, after 5-6 months from the beginning of the full-scale invasion, it resurfaced again. And of course, lots of events, including theater performances, are interrupted by sirens, by the bombings. But if they are not interrupted, they go to the end. If they are interrupted, an interruption lasts longer than 40 minutes, and everybody knows this. It means that the show is cancelled, but it will be repeated tomorrow from the very beginning.
Amazing. Tell me about the role of PEN Ukraine, because I know you've been very involved there.
I had been president of PEN Ukraine from 18 to 2022. It's still very active. There is a new president, Volodymyr Yermolenko, who is a philosopher, author of many books. In my time, actually, PEN was more involved in international projects, and we were doing a lot of events to fundraise abroad. Now, it's mostly actually working with deoccupied territories and with frontline zones. So actually, PEN is organizing fundraising for rebuilding the destroyed libraries. PEN is taking actually young authors and books for the libraries in the areas which are very dangerous and where people are still staying. PEN is, of course, organizing a lot of events in Kyiv. We have several events every month with foreign authors who still come, and actually what is interesting that many foreign authors are coming as volunteers to Ukraine. They are driving second-hand jeeps and pickup trucks for the Ukrainian army. They are passing them on to the army people, and then they are staying on for a week or two, traveling in Ukraine and taking part in discussions in different towns and cities. And so actually PEN remains one of the leading forces in this cultural, political life and battle for resistance of Ukraine, for the independence of Ukraine.
And a wonderful sort of connection here is that the chair of this festival, of Charleston Literary Festival, came and volunteers as an ambulance driver in Ukraine.
Yeah, I met several people here who are now very much involved in the helping Ukrainian army, Ukrainian wounded soldiers, Ukrainian refugees. Yesterday I met a man who lives in the next town, who actually funds hundreds and hundreds of prosthetics for the Ukrainian soldiers and civilians who lost their limbs in the war.
Extraordinary. You do travel internationally, as we've spoken. You've gone from Europe to the US, or all over the place. I wonder how that global perspective has shaped your understanding of what the world does and doesn't grasp about this war.
Well, from the very beginning it was clear that Europeans as well as Americans, they don't understand the background of Putin's hate towards Ukraine, and they don't understand the difference between Ukrainian mentality and Russian mentality. So actually, I think I spent first year explaining orally and in written form in my articles everything important from the historical background of this war, so that people could understand that this is not actually a quarrel inside the family. It's an eternal desire of Russian Empire to own Ukraine, and it is eternal the Ukrainian desire to be independent. We should understand that the war against Ukrainian identity, and this is actually part of this war, was started by Peter the Great in 1720 when he signed the first decree banning publication of religious texts in Ukrainian language and ordering to remove all existing texts from the churches on the Ukrainian territories. Between 1720 and 1917 there were more than 40 decrees banning or limiting Ukrainian language, culture, education in Ukrainian language. Catherine the Great banned lecturing in Ukrainian in Ukrainian universities like Kyiv Mohyla Academy, one of the oldest universities on the territory of Eastern Europe.
So, I mean, the history is obviously incredibly important, but where do you see the future?
Well, the future, it should be said that unless Russia changes, unless Russia becomes democratic, the danger of Russia will always be present for Ukraine, for Moldova, for Baltic states. And in this situation, I mean, we should be ready to defend our country. We should be always ready to defend also Ukrainian identity. And this is a question which is very often discussed now, because what is identity? I mean, identity is usually made of language, culture, and history. Ukrainian is a multicultural country. I'm ethnic Russian. My friends are ethnic Hungarians living in Carpathian region of Ukraine. The only writer who writes in Gagauz language, Theodora Arnaut, she is actually of like Turkic origin, but she is a professor in Kyiv University. She is a citizen of Ukraine. I think all of us should be caring about Ukrainian future, and all of us should be tolerant to each other and should defend the idea of political nation, not ethnic nation in Ukraine. Yes, the main language is Ukrainian, but Ukraine is made of dozens of minorities which are as responsible for Ukrainian future as ethnic Ukrainians are.
And have you seen writers come together, and how has the publishing industry held up throughout this?
In the beginning of the war, most of the big print works were destroyed by Russia, and most of them were situated in Kharkiv and Kharkiv region. The bookshops were closed, but actually when in 2022 in the end most of them were reopened, except for the occupied territories, then actually suddenly we realized that young people are buying books and they want to buy books to support Ukrainian culture. And in 23 alone, 13 new bookshops were opened in Kyiv. There is also economical reason for this, because lots of international brands left Ukraine, so we had lots of commercial property empty, and it was cheaper to rent these places for the bookshops. But now, we lived through several waves of interest to literature. In the beginning, everybody wanted to read non-fiction about the war written by soldiers, by volunteers, by refugees. Now there is less interest in this and more interest in foreign literature translated into Ukrainian. But I mean, the literary life is very active, and practically the leading generation of writers now are writers who are 30, 35 years old. So it is a young generation writing for a young audience. I see, that they are becoming also little by little known in the West. They are translated, like Alexander Mehed, Artem Chapai. They are published in English in the States and in the UK. The issue is, of course, that we lost about 260 writers and poets and translators who were killed in this war. So it means that there will be lots of books not written. And those writers who are active now, they should keep in mind that they are writing for themselves and for their colleagues who lost their lives.
You couldn't write fiction for a long time. What changed?
I think what happened that I accepted that war is our daily life. It's part of life. It's now not some kind of urgency or urgent and terrible situation that happens and then disappears. It stays with us, and we have to do actually everything we could do before the war, we did before the war, taking into consideration, of course, what is happening. But we should try to return to normal in abnormal times. This is the only way actually to keep country functioning.
So tell me about your fiction.
Well, I finished the third novel about Kyiv in 1919. It's a series of historical crime novels set in the time of the so-called Civil War, which was much more complicated than people can imagine, because real civil war after Lenin's revolution of 1917 was happening only in Russia, where the Red Army was fighting against the White Army. Ukraine was independent from 1918. The independence was supported by German army, which stayed on for 1.5 years in Ukraine. We had last elected hetman, the head of independent Ukraine, Pavlo Skoropadsky, with his army. There was another politician with his own army, Simon Petlura, who was fighting against hetman Skoropadsky. So we had Ukrainian civil war, we had Russian civil war, we had Polish army, and we had the biggest army of the anarchists ever organized by Nestor Makhno, actually with 35,000 soldiers, and then the number of soldiers went up to 80,000 soldiers. And these anarchists were first for independence of Ukraine, then they sided with Bolsheviks, then they were destroyed by Bolsheviks. So it was a mess. With this mess on the background, of course, there was a very active criminal life, because even people who never wanted to become criminals, who became poor, they were told that they can rob and kill the rich one. And of course, Kyiv was an incredible city at that time. It was divided into districts, and each district had its own political sympathies and its own sort of specific population. So I'm trying, using the real and invented crime stories, to show what life was like in Kyiv during the war, during the second occupation of Kyiv by Bolsheviks.
That sort of drumbeat of war, if you like, is still continuing through your fiction.
Yes, and I don't think I can actually write about peaceful times. Definitely not until the war is over. I'm thinking now also of writing a short novella about today's situation, not about the battles, but about people trying to cross into occupied territories for different reasons, yeah. And I thought actually that I wouldn't be able to write anything about what is happening today, because the war is still going on, and you don't know what will happen tomorrow. But somehow, after Grey Bees, which is a novel telling the story of 2017 in Donbass, this new short novel will be the second one about the situation in Ukraine today.
Mm-hmm. What do you do to get out of your own head, to get away from this, or is there no escaping this?
Well, there is no escaping unless you write a novel not connected with reality. And actually, I want also to continue with the series of historical crime novels. And it is easy, in fact, because I'm writing about different war, but there are lots of similarities. Between 1918 and 1921, Red Army, Bolsheviks, Moscow was trying to destroy Ukrainian independence and occupy Ukraine and turn it into Soviet Republic, Soviet province. They achieved it in 1921. So actually, when I write about that time, I keep in mind what is happening today. And I'm sure it will not be repeated, this history, because Ukraine is different today.
What do we as outsiders need to understand about the current politics of Ukraine? I understand that within the country, not everybody is a fan of Zelensky and his government.
Well, not everyone, and actually because of the corruption scandals, of course, there are lots of criticisms towards Zelensky and the way he is employing people for the government. But at the same time, everybody understands that we cannot have elections. And that actually, the war started when Zelensky was the president, so the war should be ended when he is the president. He should sign all the documents. And in a way, there is some kind of self-censorship for many people existing. Everybody is trying not to criticize too much, not to demotivate Ukrainians, because, of course, Ukrainians trust their army more than their politicians. But we need stability in the country in political sense in order to defend Ukraine.
You came up with some interesting figures when we were chatting yesterday about why the elections couldn't happen.
Well, because Ukraine is now actually 5 Ukraines. We are talking about 7 million Ukrainian refugees abroad. You can organize maybe elections in the embassies somewhere, but not everywhere. But you have to do like paperwork for each person to put them on the register which is impossible to do easily and quickly. We have 4 million displaced people. Some of them are registered as displaced people. Like when I was with my wife displaced, we didn't register ourselves. So, officially we were still living in Kiev. We have 1 million soldiers in the army, and it is difficult to vote in the trenches, especially during the battle or when you are shelled. We have 3 million probably people living in the occupied territories, and it is completely impossible to organize any kind of elections there. You can see that actually, that even if we try to have elections, the results can be annulled or announced illegitimate by any court, taking into considerations that actually half of Ukraine is not living according to their voters' registrations address.
What more do you need from the West?
Well, it's commonplace thing. More weapon, more ammunition, more political support, and more support on our way to European Union, because there is no other way for Ukraine. There is either sort of becoming a colony of Russia, part of Russian Federation, or remaining a state with independent policies, with a democratic system, without censorship. And this is what people are dreaming of in Ukraine. So, the only situation when we are guaranteed civilized future is when we are accepted into European Union.
So, Andrey, finally, what's the future for you personally?
Well, my future depends on the future of Ukraine and on the outcome of this war. I'm not going to stay in Ukraine if Ukraine is occupied. That will be very painful, but we'll have to live if Ukraine is occupied, as many Ukrainians, because nobody will accept life under the control of the Russian secret services and Russian occupation army.
And in terms of your writing?
In terms of my writing, I would like to return to fiction and to stop writing essays and articles about the war, because I have published already probably more than 200 of them in the world.
Andrey, your books are widely available in the West?
Yes, they're available practically everywhere, from Japan to Brazil.
Well, listeners, you've got to keep an eye out for them. So many wonderful books, including Our Daily War and 3 Years on Fire, which are published by Open Borders Press. This conversation was recorded at the Charleston Literary Festival in South Carolina, with huge thanks to the festival team for hosting us. Huge thanks, of course, to my wonderful guest, Andrey Kurkov.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Meet the Writers. My thanks also to Steph Chungu, who produces the programme. And you can find this episode and past shows on our website or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Georgina Godwin. Thank you for listening.